The overhead lights hummed. On the table, John Miller's heart was flatlining. Fib, no pulse. A crash cart slammed against the wall. Daniel's eyes locked on the chart. There, in yellow highlighter, a note he had ignored hours before. 12 hours earlier, in the quiet of the night shift, a nurse had tried to warn him. But when Daniel Reeves walked in, he wasn't interested in a nurse's opinion. Susan held the chart out, her finger shaking slightly on the flagged line.
The antibiotic you want. It's contraindicated with his beta blocker. Read the note.
I've been operating for 15 years. I don't take orders from night nurses.
He turned away. The chart hung from his fingertips, her warning already forgotten. Now, with the patient's heart stopped, that same note was the only thing that could bring him back.
Dr. Reeves, you need to look at this interaction. The pharmacy manual flags it.
Enough. I've made my decision. Do you need a refresher on the chain of command?
A few orderlies glanced over. Susan's face tightened, but she held her ground.
At least write that you were warned. That's all I ask.
He grabbed the chart, scrawled, noted across the yellow warning, and shoved it back. An hour later, John Miller was wheeled into pre-op, his wife gripping his hand.
Doctor, please take care of me. My little girl is waiting.
You are in good hands. We'll have you out by noon.
In the OR, the team went through their checklist. The anesthesiologist flipped past the flagged page without stopping. Susan stood at the end of the corridor, watching the OR doors close. Her note was now buried under fresh paperwork. The OR doors sealed with a hiss. Overhead, the surgical light blazed down on John Miller's draped chest.
Scalpel. Let's get this bypass done. Everything looks textbook.
The blade cut clean. No tremor in Daniel's fingers. Beside him, Michael Chen adjusted the anesthesia flow.
Vitals are stable. Heart rate 72, pressure 110/70. He's coasting.
Good. Let's not keep his daughter waiting. We'll have him in recovery by 1.
The monitor beeped a steady rhythm. Down in the chart stack, the yellow highlighted note lay buried under a consent form.
Irrigation. Let's keep the field clear. We're nearly at the graft site.
The minutes ticked by in routine precision. No one glanced at the flagged page. No one second-guessed the antibiotic order. The heart-lung machine hummed. John Miller's life depended on every decision in this room. And one decision was already wrong.
Michael, start the prophylactic antibiotic standard protocol.
Michael pushed the syringe into the IV line. The clear antibiotic vanished into John's bloodstream. Within 30 seconds, the monitor chirped. John's heartbeat skipped. A jagged line flickered on the screen.
Wait, I'm seeing PVCs, premature ventricular contractions. That's not normal.
It's vagal. Happens with abdominal pressure. Give him a little atropine if it rises again.
This is persistent. Look at the trace. It's not settling. I want to check the chart.
You check the chart while I'm in the middle of a bypass. Stay on the gas. I'm almost done.
The rhythm steadied for 2 minutes. Then the jagged spike returned, wider, more frequent.
This is not vagal. His potassium, his medication list. I should have read the whole chart.
Daniel's hands never faltered. The graft was nearly complete. He never once looked away from the chest. Unseen, the first domino had tipped. The monitor's warning was just a whisper, and it was being ignored. The monitor shrieked. John's blood pressure plummeted to 80/50, then kept falling.
Pressure's crashing. He's losing perfusion. This is not a vagal response, Daniel.
It's the bypass pump. Push a bolus of fluids. I'm closing the graft.
Michael grabbed the chart, flipped pages. The yellow highlighted note blazed up at him.
There's a warning here. Drug interaction. The night nurse flagged the antibiotic. It's contraindicated with his meds.
A nurse, this is my OR. I don't have time for a midnight shift sticky note.
The monitor's rhythm widened. Vitash flickered. The heart was beating, but fighting to pump.
Daniel read it? She predicted this. We have to reverse it before he arrests.
Daniel's hand hovered over the page, but he didn't look. He shoved the chart away. Then the flatline alarm screamed, one long tone. John's heart had stopped. The oar exploded into frantic motion. Compression started. The overhead light flickered. Michael pushed epinephrine as the code blue siren tore through the silence. Daniel's trembling hand reached for the chart he had shoved aside minutes before. The pages fell open to the yellow highlighted warning. There it was. Susan Keller's handwriting, circled twice, underlined in red. The reversal protocol was clipped behind it.
She was right. The one time I didn't listen.
Daniel, what does it say? For God's sake, read it.
His eyes widened above the mask. The arrogance drained from his face, leaving hollow, sinking shock. The flatline tone drilled into the operating room, relentless. Each second that passed peeled away another chance for John Miller. Daniel stared at the note, his professional identity crumbling. Susan's instructions were his only map through this nightmare. The reversal was explicit, dose and timing, but he hadn't spoken the words. His throat locked. The room held its breath. The note burned in his gloved hand, and the rescue had not yet begun.
The reversal protocol: 2 grams magnesium IV push, then lidocaine drip. She mapped it out step by step.
Do it. Now, follow her protocol. Every line. This isn't my call anymore.
A nurse's gloved hands drew the magnesium into a syringe. Michael took it and pushed it into the IV line. For 3 seconds, nothing. Then the flat line cracked. A tiny blip. Another, a wavering but real rhythm.
Sinus rhythm, pressure climbing, 95, 100. He's coming back. The note worked.
Daniel stepped back from the table, his hands trembling inside the gloves. The surgical field was still open, but the immediate threat had passed.
Susan Keller. The night nurse I humiliated. She saved his life with a piece of paper I almost threw away.
The team closed the chest in tense silence. The note was passed from hand to hand, each pair of eyes widening. When the gurney rolled out toward the ICU, the OR fell into a hollow stillness. Only Daniel remained, the chart still open. His fingers traced the yellow line, where his own arrogant noted now sat beneath her life-saving instructions. The surgical lights dimmed. The last team member left the OR. Daniel remained, alone with the chart. He walked to the scrub room and dropped onto the bench. A passing nurse told him Susan Keller was off shift.
I need to talk to her. I need to understand how she knew.
He opened the chart again. Her handwriting was steady, precise, nothing like the hurried notes of a typical night nurse. The chief resident paused at the scrub room door. His words were clipped. An incident review was automatic. The committee would convene by Friday.
An incident review. They'll see the note. They'll see I ignored it.
He flipped to the medication order. His signature sat inches above Susan's warning, a permanent record of his decision.
I signed off on a contraindicated drug. There's no explaining that away.
He closed the chart and stared at the blank wall. The machinery of the hospital was already turning against him. Susan's name echoed in his mind, the one he had brushed off. She was out of reach, and his career was sinking into her one small note. At dawn, Daniel unlocked his office and logged into the personnel system. He typed Keller Susan.
Registered nurse, 5 years. Before that, nothing. A blank?
2 years of her history were missing. No employment, no education, just a gap. Across town, Susan sat in her quiet kitchen, a cup of coffee untouched. She pulled a worn journal from the drawer.
I never thought I'd open this again.
Inside, next to a faded photograph of a young resident in surgical blues, was her old ID badge. Susan Keller, MD.
I was a different person then.
She turned the page to an article she'd authored, Fatal Drug Interactions in Cardiac Surgery. Her name was still listed as lead author. The night nurse who had warned Daniel was once a surgeon. The instincts had never left her, but she had buried that past so deep. Even the hospital didn't know. Until now, she stepped through the sliding doors. the antiseptic air hitting her at once. Daniel was waiting.
Keller, I've been trying to reach you. We need to talk.
About the note? I saw John made it to the ICU. He's stable.
He's stable because of your note. But how did you know? That wasn't an accident.
I read charts. That's what nurses do.
You're not just a nurse. I looked at your file. There's a blank where training should be.
A couple of nurses slowed, straining to hear. Susan's jaw tightened, but her voice stayed even.
Maybe you should ask yourself why you didn't read it. You almost killed a patient.
He didn't say it, but the word hovered between them, glorified note-taker. Susan's eyes hardened. She walked past him. By noon, a formal summons was pinned to the department board. Incident review, Dr. Daniel Reeves, Friday, 9 a.m., Friday morning. The review room smelled of stale coffee and unspoken blame. Daniel sat rigid, white coat starched, facing 4 senior physicians. Susan was called in. She walked to the witness chair, her hands folded, her face calm.
I followed standard protocol. The nurse's note was not part of the formal pre-op checklist.
The committee chair leaned forward and asked the question everyone wanted answered. Miss Keller, how did a night nurse predict a near-fatal drug interaction?
I saw the medication list and checked the interactions. It's what any vigilant nurse would do.
But the chair wasn't satisfied. He tilted his head, studying her face like a half-remembered photograph. He removed his glasses. I know that voice. You are Susan Keller. You authored the cardiac drug interaction paper during your residency, didn't you? A projector whirred. On the wall, an old issue of the Journal of Thoracic Surgery appeared, her name as lead author.
That was 14 years ago. I left medicine.
Daniel's face went blank. The entire axis of the investigation had just pivoted onto him. The chair leaned further still. You were on track for a surgical fellowship. Why did you walk away?
Because my daughter got sick. I spent 2 years in a pediatric ward, not an OR. I lost her.
A silent image filled the screen behind her. A younger Susan in surgical scrubs, holding a retractor, eyes full of focus. Another image, Susan in civilian clothes, carrying a baby carrier out of a children's hospital, her face hollowed by grief.
I took the nursing exam 6 years ago. I needed to be close to patients again, but I couldn't be the one holding the scalpel.
The other committee members glanced down at their notes. Even Daniel's own posture sagged.
She left surgery because of a child. I dismissed her because of a title.
The chair closed the journal with a soft thud. This committee strongly recommends a formal public apology. Otherwise, we will pursue disciplinary action. Daniel said nothing. His eyes flickered to Susan, then to the floor. The choice was now his alone. The committee adjourned. Outside, the corridor was empty, but Daniel felt the weight of every door that had been closed to Susan before. That night, Daniel's apartment was a dark shell. He ignored the blinking voicemail, sat on the couch, and stared at the wall.
A whole committee watched, and all I could think was, she's better than me.
He pulled the folded note from his coat. The yellow highlighter still glowed under the street lamp's weak light.
I called her a glorified note-taker, but these words are the only reason John Miller is breathing.
He walked to the window and met his reflection. For a long minute, he didn't recognize the man staring back.
If I don't stand up now, I'll spend the rest of my career wondering when they'll find out Susan lost her daughter and still found a way to serve. I can at least lose my pride.
He sat back down, grabbed a pen, and began to write. Not a defense, an admission. The first light of dawn crept through the blinds as he wrote the last line. I was wrong. Listen to the night nurse. The decision was made. But the hardest part, standing in front of his peers and speaking those words aloud, still waited. The next morning, Daniel found Susan at the nurse station, her shift ending. The hum of the lights was the only sound.
Susan, I was wrong. I should have read your note. I am sorry.
Sorry isn't enough. You humiliated me. You nearly killed John. A hallway apology changes nothing.
She crossed her arms, eyes unblinking. The weight of every dismissed nurse seemed to stand behind her.
As a resident, my attending ignored my warning. A patient died. I left because I couldn't be silenced. Make it public. Tell them the night staff isn't disposable. Our notes matter.
I will. I need you there. They need to see your face.
And you'll stand there and admit you were wrong? In front of all of them?
Yes, I'll say it. I'll read the note aloud if I have to.
She studied him, then nodded slowly. They shook hands, a fragile truce. Daniel left, the board meeting 3 hours away. He walked from the nurse station straight to an alcove and dialed the committee chair. His voice was flat but certain.
I'll address the surgical board. Full admission. Susan Keller will stand with me.
Word traveled fast. Within an hour, a senior cardiologist cornered him outside his office. Voice urgent.
We don't expose our own. This will follow you for years.
Daniel gripped the door frame. The note in his pocket suddenly felt like a stone against his chest.
Make it public. Our notes matter. Susan's words. She faced worse than a boardroom.
He locked his office door and pulled out the draft. His pen made no sound as he crossed out every excuse and left only the truth. 3 lines remained. I ignored a night nurse. She saved my patient. Night staff are not invisible. He read it aloud to an empty room, his voice cracking only once on I was wrong. He folded the paper into his coat. The board meeting was 7 hours away. There was no turning back now. The surgical boardroom was packed. 30 senior physicians sat in tiered seats, their masks now just faces, waiting.
I made a choice last Tuesday that nearly killed a patient. I ignored a night nurse's note.
He unfolded the chart page and held it up. The yellow highlighted warning was visible to the entire room.
This note predicted a fatal drug interaction. I was wrong. The night nurse who wrote it saved John Miller's life. That nurse is Susan Keller. She was once a surgical resident, and she authored the very paper I failed to apply.
A murmur rolled through the room. Several heads turned toward Susan, who sat motionless in the front row.
I recommend a hospital-wide system, a hotline for nursing notes, mandatory review. Night staff are not invisible.
Silence hung for 3 heartbeats. Then a single clap, then another, building into a wave of reluctant applause. The board chair rose, his voice steady. We will take this recommendation under immediate review. Daniel stepped back from the podium. His career had shifted, but his conscience was finally clear. The note was no longer buried. 2 days later, the hospital CEO faced cameras and staff. The atrium was silent. He held up a certificate for Susan Keller. Exceptional clinical judgment. The room applauded. By evening, a digital screen in the lobby flashed the new protocol. Nursing note hotline now active. Daniel opened the sealed letter from the committee. 6-month probation. All surgeries supervised.
They could have fired me. Instead, they're giving me a chance to prove I've changed.
A week later, the hospital newsletter landed on every desk. Susan's photo was front and center. The headline read, "The note that rewrote protocol." Inside, her new role on the safety committee. Daniel read the article in his office. He carefully tore out the page. Walking the corridor, he touched his coat pocket. The note and the clipping were both there. He walked into the new day. The nurse's note now the foundation of a promise he intended to keep. Later that afternoon, Daniel found Susan alone at the nurse station. The applause from the press conference had long faded, and the corridor was quiet. He approached without his white coat, no chart in hand, just the man who had once belittled her. She looked up, exhaustion in her eyes, but curiosity too.
You didn't just save John Miller. You made me face the doctor I'd become.
Notes only work if someone reads them. That's the system we still need to fix.
She didn't smile, but her eyes softened. The tension that had lived between them for days began to dissolve.
I'll spend the rest of my career proving I've learned that lesson.
Then maybe all this was worth it.
He extended his hand. She took it, her grip firm, their eyes meeting, a handshake that meant more than any apology. They parted without ceremony, Daniel walking one way, Susan turning back to her station. The note was no longer just paper. John Miller sat on the edge of his bed, street clothes crisp, a walking cane by his side. The discharge papers were signed. His wife embraced Susan tightly. The daughter, no more than 7, clutched a handmade thank you card.
They told me about the note, Miss Keller. My little girl gets her daddy because of you.
The child handed Susan the card, a crayon heart, blue and red, and the words, "Thank you for saving my daddy."
I was just doing my job. It's what nurses do.
From the doorway, Daniel watched. He hadn't planned to stop. He couldn't pull away.
I would have taken this from them. My arrogance almost left that little girl fatherless.
Susan caught his eye for a second. A small nod. No words needed. Daniel stepped back into the corridor, leaving the family to their moment. The sounds of laughter followed him down the hall. For the first time in weeks, the hospital didn't feel like a battlefield. It felt like a place where healing happened for everyone. A month later, the nursing hotline hummed on every floor. The culture was no longer about hierarchy. It was about safety. A young night nurse, new to the ward, stared at a medication order. Her hands shook as she opened the hotline app. She typed, "Flagged interaction. Antibiotic X with beta blocker. Please review." Daniel's tablet buzzed. He stopped mid-stride, reading the alert, then walked to the nurse's station.
You flagged the beta blocker conflict? Good catch. I am changing the antibiotic. Thank you.
He pulled out his pen and wrote across the order. Noted. Thank you. The same words, now with a different weight. The young nurse exhaled. No ridicule, no dismissal. Just a system that worked. At the end of the corridor, Susan emerged from a room, chart in hand. Daniel spotted her and raised his chin. She returned the nod, not a smile, but an acknowledgement. The note had become a quiet language between them. The hotline was no longer just a protocol. It was proof that the smallest voice could save a life if someone finally chose to listen. Sunrise broke as Susan signed off. The night shift was done. A young nurse stopped her in the hall, asking if she was the one who wrote the now famous note.
I just did my job.
She didn't wait for a reply. In the break room, she pulled off her scrub cap and let the light hit her face. She stood at the window, coffee in hand. The world outside was quiet. A faint smile crossed her lips. She was content. She gathered her bag and walked to the exit. The morning sun was warm. The note had become a symbol, but for Susan, it was just a shift. She had done her work. She stepped through the doors. The hospital fading behind her. Somewhere inside, a yellow highlighted note still hung on the board, a reminder that the smallest voice can keep a heart beating. In his office, a stack of patient charts rested on the corner of Daniel's desk. The morning light slanted through the blinds. He picked up the top chart and flipped to the nursing notes. A yellow highlighted line caught his eye. He read the note carefully. A nurse's clear, concise warning about a mild interaction. He nodded to himself. Daniel picked up his pen. In the margin, he wrote 3 words. Noted, thank you. The same words he had once scrawled dismissively now carried a different weight. He meant every letter. He tapped the chart once, a quiet acknowledgement of the voice that had been invisible before. He set the chart aside and looked toward the window. The hospital felt different now. Somewhere in the building, a nurse was writing another note, confident that someone would read it. Daniel smiled, a real one, and turned back to his work. The note was no longer a threat, but a partner. In that small moment, with a stack of charts and a pen, the culture of a hospital had quietly changed.